I did I count 6 or 7 dogs?
There are 7.
Okay. So
By the way, this is my husband. Say hi.
Hi.
This is
Hi.
Will.
Will.
Yeah. Hi, honey. You're okay.
Okay. So, and I read that we have one dog in particular that's kind of Bessie, is it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So go ahead and just fill me in on, or they can fill me in on what's going on here.
So Bessie is the youngest. She's the 7th dog. I put in the contact form sheet that I fostered Bessie's mom through Fetching Tails Foundation. And so she was born in our basement. We raised them, right? And I found everyone homes, and husband was very nice and let me adopt Bessie. So she's been with us for her entire life, and we love her to pieces. But the past, what do you think, 5 months? 5 or 6 months, we've been having some issues where she'll get mad at the other dogs. One time it was over a treat. One time had a bone involved. So our golden doodle is food possessive, and so we know he needs to eat in his pen. He goes into his pen when he gets a bone or when he eats his food, and he's great about it.
Okay.
So we started putting Bessie in her crate so that we don't have any issues when there's a bone out or anything, right? And that's helped. But then it started to be more when she gets super frustrated. We had people deliver something one day, and she got so frustrated that she couldn't get into the mudroom, that she just lashed out at one of the other dogs, and we had an eye wound, right?
Okay.
For some context,
Mhm.
she was frustrated. At this time as well.
I'm sorry, can you
I
repeat
had
that?
let her into the room.
Repeat it.
Oh, sorry. So I had let Abby into the room
Oh, right.
when Bessie was frustrated, we
Mhm.
feel like, and then that's when she attacked Abby
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah,
Gotcha. So she was like already amped up,
yes.
and then you walked into the room with Abby,
Mm-hmm.
and then the incident occurred.
It escalated that, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
right. And then just this past weekend, so one of the things we've been trying to do is get Bessie out in situations so that she's trying to be exposed to new people, new places, and we work on her training when we do that, because she went to dog training now.
Right.
And so I'll make her sit next to me, or I'll, say, let's go, or let people come over and she can sniff them, all that kind of stuff. But recently she's become very nervous when new people approach her, and she starts growling or barking. And then we did this Saturday night. We took her for a little car ride and then came home, and she seemed very nervous after the experience. And I came in, was getting all the dogs ready to go out in the backyard, and she got mad at Abby. And so now poor little girl is in the cone of shame.
Oh, yeah.
And has 3 stitches from a puncture wound right below her ear. So that was sort of for us like, okay, this is bigger than us. We need help.
Sure.
I don't know what it is. I feel like shelter in place made this a little more difficult because she's now used to me being home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do partly feel like that they want my attention, and they're getting upset if one is getting attention and I'm not there, or I don't know. But I notice she gets more upset now when I come home and she's in her crate. She hates being in the crate. So we don't know.
Okay. The when you said you came back from that car ride and she seemed more nervous,
Yeah.
what did that look like?
She was kind of pacing. There was some panting. She wandered into the house and was doing the same, just pacing, panting. And then Abby walked by her and she lunged.
Was she pacing or I'm not pacing, but was she panting or any behavior in the car ride?
She was sticking her head out the window, and she looked pretty content, just kind of, but she does get nervous. Like, I feel like she's not necessarily comfortable in the car where she just sits. There's some shaking, you know, so there is some hesitancy.
Have you seen that behavior? I'm assuming you've seen that behavior before.
Yes. So I'm a yoga teacher. I co-own a yoga studio, and I've been doing a backyard yoga class in our backyard with some of our students so we can socially distance and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And this Sunday, she hid behind our shed. Normally when they come over, she'll go say hi to them. And she's been okay with them being in the yard. But this Sunday, she wouldn't come out. She was just hiding behind the shed. She was shaking. She was nervous. I did bring her out at one point just to kind of encourage her, and she just jumped at me, wanted me to pick her up, really just didn't want the other people to come over, and she was just shaking the whole time.
Have there been fireworks in your area?
A few times, yeah.
Last weekend?
They don't seem to bug her too much.
Okay, so she's kind of indifferent to fireworks.
Yeah, she kind of doesn't seem to care too much.
Trying to think, what was the weather like last weekend?
It was a little more humid. It was very humid Sunday morning.
But not
Actually,
stormy,
very
anything like that?
No.
Okay.
There was that storm Friday night.
How was she then?
She was okay.
Okay. When people enter the yard, I'm assuming I'm sorry, did you say something, sir?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
sorry. You know, unless that they'll react to like the first like clap of thunder.
Right.
You know, they'll be like, oh hey, what's that? And then after that, they'll just be like, whatever. They'll go back to everyone kind of goes back to normal after the first clap.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out, because if there seems to be like an uptick. So what you think is what looks like nervousness to you is actually anxiety.
Yeah.
Right.
Nervousness, it tends to be very. They react to very quick movements.
Okay.
They tend to be very kind of just like edgy, you know. So when I hear panting, pacing, shaking, that's anxiety.
Okay.
So like fear, nervousness, and anxiety look similar, but they're different.
Okay.
Okay. So it sounds like her stress levels are going too high, and when the dog comes into her space, it's kind of like, give me space, like, you know,
Right.
I'm stressed out type of, you know.
Okay. I can see
picking up-
that.
Yeah, and I'll explain the other stuff too.
Sure.
I'm just trying to figure out why, because you had these, your students come over for these outside yoga sessions.
Yep.
Fine, and then all of a sudden one Sunday, she's got anxiety.
It was very strange, and I think it was partly because they all felt bad for Abby, right? Because she'd been hurt, and so they were kind of saying, you know, and they were just joking, but they were just kind of telling one of the people who arrived, you know, oh, don't talk to Bessie. She was mean to Abby last night, right? And after that, I noticed this shift. Like maybe the energy of the students was conveying they were upset with her. So maybe she was hesitant.
Was it like in terms of energy, when your students, do they go into your home or into the yard straight through?
The backyard, straight into the backyard.
Okay. Typically upon entry, are they usually like just, how do you say, lower energy, how are you? And then they get themselves ready. And then that one time, was it like a bigger energy? Like like in terms of just communication and talking and you know what I'm saying?
They were. No, I think they were a little bit more energy as people were coming in this Sunday. Okay.
It's a possibility. So dogs are very sensitive to energy, and energy for me, like I'm in the middle of Chicago.
Right.
It's a much bigger energy here than it is in the suburb.
Right.
Right. You got cars moving, you got a lot of people moving, you got conversations, you got bars, all that stuff. Right. So it's not uncommon for me to get a dog that moves from the suburb into the city, and they're like very stressed out. And they start to display reactivity, human reactivity, dog reactivity, things like that. And the owner's like, why? Like the dog was great for for 4 or 5 years, and I moved to Chicago. I'm like, because the energy.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot more busier here, and dogs, if they're not used to it, they're very sensitive. My dogs, I'm from Florida, but my dogs are from south tip of Texas, super quiet town. Like everybody knows everybody. And when I moved here to Chicago, back to Chicago, I moved to South Loop. And my Pitty didn't poop for 3 days because she was so anxious.
Oh,
And
no.
she was always panting and salivating, but because of structure, like she acclimated quickly.
Sure.
But she was anxious in the beginning because it was a complete 180.
Right.
So, and I'm trying to figure out, because that is out of the ordinary, you know, because it kind of seems like Bessie was fine, and all of a sudden there's been like an uptick of anxiety or things like that.
I feel that way too. And just so you know, like for me, I'm a very routine person. I'm a homebody, and shelter in place only encourage that, right? So they've been on a very structured routine with me for the past few months. And then all of a sudden I started leaving again, and that bothered her. And then people all of a sudden were showing up at the house, and that's kind of like, whoa, what's going on, right?
I forgot about that. You're absolutely right.
It's just interesting. And I mean, we've had other issues before shelter in place, but so we've been mindful about that, but I do feel like this has made it worse.
Oh, for sure. You know, and it's funny because I know we were talking about shelter in place stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot, because I'm so like, how do you say? I've been telling all my puppy clients, like, prepare for, you know, when you go back to normalcy, separation anxiety, right? And we want to do that now.
Yeah.
So actually, yes, that makes complete sense. That's why.
Right.
Okay. So to give you an example, I had a client, they're from Uruguay.
Okay.
It's a couple, and they used to have a 9 to 5, and then the fiance, the girlfriend, got laid off or something, and she ended up working from home.
Okay.
So then they moved to Chicago shortly thereafter, and then, you know, she was trying to find work again. But she had been with the dog for like 3 to 6 months in home, and then all of a sudden there's all these issues that came out of nowhere.
Right.
Like they used to leave, no problem, no issues, no anxiety, no separation anxiety, no barking, none of that stuff. And all of a sudden she got laid off. She was working from home. She was working from home for a bit. And then when she tried to leave, it was a big problem.
Yep.
Okay. So yes, that's exactly, I completely forgot about
we have to, it's hard to remember those, especially because this has been an unprecedented time. And so it's just weird regardless. And you know, Will's relationship with the dogs is very different than my relationship with the dogs, right? Okay. He's always worked from home. They're used to him coming downstairs, going to his office and working until 6 o'clock, right? When I'm home, they're always with me. They follow me upstairs. They go downstairs with me. We go outside together, right? And then all of a sudden I'll leave, and Bessie is just very attached to me. And so she hates when she's in her crate, just hates it. Okay.
And what's that look like?
She actually will put her teeth on the bars and like pull on the bars.
Okay.
She will move the crate to escape out the side hatch. We've been looking into, what are they? The indestructible crate, the high anxiety one.
We've been able to kind of keep her in there now, so she's not escaping as much. But like when she's frustrated in the crate, let's like when we get home, for example, she'll just literally sit in front of the crate and bark a storm.
Yeah.
Like a very stressful.
Gotcha. So she can escape, like you said. She'll move it, so she goes up the side hatch. Will she do like push her nose through and just pop it open?
Yep.
Yeah. Once they learn how to escape, it's a bit more difficult.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Okay. Anything else about Bessie I should know?
Because I know her mom also had anxiety issues, and that she also had behavioral problems. We, at the time, chalked it up to because she was pregnant, and she was an extremely protective mother. We could not have humans into the house. She would bite them, right? So she did not want anyone near the babies. Thankfully, she trusted me, she trusted Will, and that was, besides one other person, wasn't allowed into the house. right? So she is exhibiting similar reactions to how her mom was in the crate when I came home. So I know that she gets some of this from mom. Yeah.
We also, I mean, this is probably a separate conversation. Like we also might think that there's like a potential alpha shift going on in our house. So when we first brought Abby home,
this is the alpha.
Well, when we first brought Abby home, she and
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, she and our other female dog Evie would fight all the time.
Yes.
Like no blood or anything like that, but they would sit there and they would tackle each other, like pretty aggressively, like hard enough that we'd have to separate them. Evie's a little older now. She's going to be 12 this year, so I think that she's just kind of resigned herself to not being, or not kind of challenging anyone for an alpha type position. But if there are two dogs that really go at it, it's so like, for example, we'll put Bessie away to chew on a bone, but when she's done with the bone, she and Abby will sit there and bark at each other. Her in the crate, frustrated, barking at Abby. Abby on the couch laying on Allie, barking back at her, and showing teeth at that point.
Oh wow, sure.
So, so I mean, she.
This is a spitfire. Like this little girl, she does cause some issues as well. Our 65-pound golden doodle, thankfully he's pretty laid back dude, but she will jump at his beard and like hang from his face because she is like, get away from her, so she doesn't make it easy either.
Yeah.
Right?
How old is Abby?
What?
How old is she?
5.
5, okay.
So she's still too young to give up her role as alpha, right? So we don't know if maybe that has something to do with it.
Right. So when it comes to like the whole pack hierarchy, especially when you have multi-dog homes, and me and my stepdad at one point had 9 dogs amongst us.
Wow.
And he had 4 Border Collies, 1 Doberman mix, and then 1 Shiba Border Collie mix, right?
Wow, pretty.
And I had my Pit Bull, my Chihuahua, and then my Chow mix. So quite the array of dogs. And you would see little spats from time to time, but we always would step in and correct the dogs. So like I know a lot of people, they kind of approach it as let the dogs correct the dogs. And it's kind of yes or no. Like my dogs, I know are very well balanced and correct appropriately. And they know when to correct and all that stuff. And then other dogs will overcorrect where they'll like puncture and actually bite. And like, I've come into homes with dead dogs, things like that. So I tell them, in my opinion, you don't want the dogs to correct each other because they think it's amongst themselves when really it's the humans, right? The humans address everything. Abby disagrees with that. Well, I disagree with Abby disagreeing with that,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like kids growing up, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I couldn't discipline my brothers or sister.
Right.
If I did, yeah, exactly. I would get in trouble, so then mama, she would give me consequence. She's like, that's not your job. That's my job. If there's a problem, you tell us, right? It's the same thing for the dogs. If you look at them as 3 to 4-year-old children, it kind of helps you get a better idea of how to treat them. And then just the social structure that they have, which is something that, we can cover. But that's just my 2 cents on it, is to kind of help resolve those issues. You have to be proactive about addressing it for them. So then they don't feel like it's amongst themselves. And then that'll help kind of dip things down a bit, at least in terms of the dogs together.
I need help learning how to be, I think, better alpha. I don't think I necessarily know how to get them to listen to me that way. And an example would be the other night when we were having the bone situation, right? Where Bessie's in her crate barking and Abby's on the sofa barking. Will stood up and stood in between them. And he looked at Bessie and he just said, sit, right? And she did. And she stopped barking and she listened to him, right? And then Abby calmed down. And a few minutes later, Abby started, so he stood in front of her and she stopped. And that helped a lot. But I feel like if I stand in between them, it doesn't give that reaction. I feel like then they're like, well, I want mommy.
Right. So does either of you give more affection than the other? Yeah, that's partially why.
So when I'm at home alone with them, mostly because I'm working a lot, I never have all of them out at the same time.
Sure.
So because I can't focus, if I can't focus on all of them, I just simply never have them all out. So I only keep out the ones that I know will get along properly. Because that allows me to focus on what I need to focus on, and have a little bit of fun with them when I can. So like if Bessie's out, I'll have the two that get along best with her, Ren and Stimpy, and Ben out potentially. But then
I know they came to us with the names Ren and Stimpy. We aren't changing those names.
And then usually it's either the littles are out.
You want to hold this for me?
Sure.
Usually it's either the littles are out or the bigs are out. And that's what I can deal with. And I think that they're used to that. Like they don't really contest me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
Yeah.
This is Bessie.
Oh, I see.
Say hi, Bessie Boo. Say hi, Jessie. So this is the rascal.
Sure. And how big is she?
40 pounds.
40 pounds.
Yeah, I know. I realized after I sent in a contact form, I listed all the other dogs, but forgot to give you the information about her.
That's fine. Yeah,
She's also
I read
spayed.
over it, but I usually I'll read over it, and then I usually ask the same questions again because it just helps me retain the info better.
Sure. Oh, jeez. This is the golden doodle. I now made them think that they can jump on mommy. So
yeah. So what Will is saying makes a lot of sense. Justin, because he's got a structure. Right. And it makes a lot of sense with the issues that you're dealing with and the issues that he doesn't have. Yeah. Because they're used to this rotational kind of schedule with him. Right. And he's also, I would assume, indifferent because he's doing his work. Yep. Right. Whereas for you, when you mentioned, they're like following you all over the place, there's a lot of attachment there, which is why there's anxiety in the kennel. Oh, good. Okay. Right. Yeah. So, and then also just the fact that you give more affection. Right. He always tells me that I'm probably a big part of the problem. So. Oh yeah. Humans, a lot of stuff is relationship based, right? Right. So especially when I used to board dogs out of my home prior to my facility, like I had both human and dog aggressive dogs together. And these were dogs that would nail the crap out of you or another dog, right? And you would see they didn't like each other. Right. They did not like each other, but they knew that if they did the tiniest little thing, there was going to be the harshest correction. Right. And that's why I had no problems, right? Right. Obviously, in your case, it's different, but it was a relationship. They're like, Jesse is like drill sergeant. He does not let a thing slide. You do not want to play with him. Right. In your case, it's the pretty standard family pet type hierarchy thing. Definitely when we're trying to resolve these issues, you don't have to be big, tough, dominant, mean, right? But you do have to be black and white, and you do have to be blunt. And you can't be your dog's buddy, and you can't be their authority at the same time either. Right. It's the same with a kid. Exactly. And I always tell people, you want to be the authority first, because the buddy is the easy part. Right. Buddy's easy. Authority and respect is difficult. Right. And then once you've achieved one thing, which is in most cases is we're buddies, trying to switch that mind frame can be difficult, because the dog's like, what I've known you for X amount of years, and you've been this way, and now you want to be an authority? Like, no. Right. So then it's more work. It's not impossible, but I just told the owner, you're probably gonna have to do more you have to overcompensate essentially to make up for all that stuff. Okay. Any questions so far? No, but yeah. So the in-home dynamic isn't that hard. Okay, so I'm not really I have ways that we can approach that. Okay. The hard part is the owner being consistent. And willing to go to the extent needed to resolve things. These guys are my life. I like my dogs. I am happy to go above and beyond for all of them. So, and I work very hard to try and work with the training, especially with Bessie anymore, right? Because we know we have
some things to work on. It's just, I need to be trained to know what to do and how to help her, right?
Correct.
So I do think that it's that.
Yeah, Bessie's the one that's going to require more extensive work.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's not like a ton, but she's definitely going to, because the other stuff, like, it's like you have good dogs, but there's just minor little arguments from time to time that you just need to stop.
Well, when people come over, for the most part, they're all kind of amazed, you know, because I've had groups of people over, you know, 8 people, we're all in the family room watching a movie, and all the dogs are sleeping. There's no barking, there's no wrestling, they're all just totally chill. And for the most part, we go through the day and they're fine. They're happy, they're content. It's just whenever anything seems to stress someone out, something out of the ordinary happens. And then that's when we have problems.
Yeah,
Right.
The energy in the house is always really high when either people come over or we leave or we come home. Like that's when I think we have like the highest opportunity for problems. And obviously when we feed them, there's always that. But again, like we have a structure around feeding them, right? That we follow religiously. You know, and Bessie goes in her place, Ben goes in his pen. You know, we feed 3 littles, Ren and Stimpy, and then Ben and Bessie. Like we feed them in a really strict order there. So like we have good structure around all of that works. But we don't have a lot of control, you know, especially like when we come home, right? Like that's, I think we lack a lot of control there. And I always tell Allie, you know, the house is super quiet when you're gone.
It's like a home.
And then when you come home, the house, you know, suddenly gets really loud. You know, when I come out of my office, you know, everyone gets excited and the house gets loud. You know, I think they get the most excited when we're both around. You know, that's when I think that's when they know we're kind of like giving them attention for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Is when we're both hanging out and we're both around. You know, it's funny because when you're home alone with me, when I used to travel, you know, you say the dogs are pretty laid back.
Oh yeah, when it's just one of us in the house, they're all angels.
Yeah, everyone seems to behave. But when both of us are around, the energy obviously I think goes up. And of course, when people come over, obviously the house is pretty chaotic. But, you know, like Ali said, like we had 8 people over at one point, and you know, probably after like 30 minutes, everyone just really
chill.
Everyone really calmed down. Everyone was super mellow with a bunch of people there. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you guys come back home from being out for a bit. What is it? Just all the dogs are just rush to the door barking, or?
No, so Ben, it's really funny. Instead of crate training Ben, we used one of those big pens.
Sure.
Right? The metal kind. And he stays in there. He has always stayed in there. He could step over it and come out, but he just stays in it. He's such a good boy. And he just chills in there. We have a crate and we put Bessie, Ren, and Stimpy into the crate.
Okay.
Ren and Stimpy are big markers and they came to us this way and we can't get them to unmark, unfortunately.
Okay.
And so we put them in the crate with Bessie. And that also seems to be one thing that calms Bessie down. She doesn't try to break out if Ren and Stimpy are in there with her. So, so they are in the crate, Ben's in his pen, and then usually our 3 tiny dogs, they will be roaming around the family room.
Okay. And is it like are they just barking in the crates, or what's the energy like?
Oliver, the tiny Chihuahua, he's 5 pounds. He will be barking his little head off. Abby will be barking because she's excited and she wants attention. Bessie's barking in her crate. Ren's barking in the crate. And Ben is usually jumping up and down.
In the pen?
Yeah, in the pen.
Ben in the pen, okay.
Ben in the pen.
Sure. Okay. Anything else?
No, not right. I think, I mean, out of all of that, like everyone's excited, and I feel like Bessie is the one that's stressed about it.
Yeah, like it's a different kind of bark for her. It's a loud, angry bark to me. And I don't let her come out of the crate until she sits and waits for me to say so. Because I'm trying to direct her attention to what it is I'd like her to do. You know, and so she will calm down, but she will bark first before she'll be willing just to sit.
Well, I don't really think
Okay. So it sounds like this would be more complicated because you have 7 dogs,
Well,
but it's actually not.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
The only one that really needs more work would be Bessie.
Okay.
Okay. So before reaching out, do you guys do any research on me? Read up on me?
No, I mean, you guys have nice Yelp reviews. Maria on the phone was so nice, you know, and I really appreciated that you guys are trying to accommodate via Zoom and in person. And so I don't know, but go ahead.
So I come from a background of a lot of different trainers.
Okay.
The main one being Cesar Milan.
Mm-hmm.
He was my greatest influence starting my career,
Mm-hmm.
which is why like cases like yours aren't difficult for me, because
Okay.
he's known for handling many dogs.
Right.
And I work with many dogs. Like now my staff we go on our pack walks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had as many as 8 dogs myself. You know, my other handlers 6, 4. Like they're out on a pack walk right now.
Cool.
So which nobody else that I know of in Chicago can do but us.
Well, I'm glad I found you.
You know, and when we had those 9 dogs, I used to take all 9 dogs in the South Loop for a walk up the lakefront.
That's awesome.
So you know, so that's the easier part, because it's really just. I know when you said you're trying to redirect her to what you want her to do,
Mm-hmm.
but do you know what you're missing?
No.
Correcting what you don't want her to do.
Yes, I agree.
For all of them.
Yes.
Okay, so like the barking and the kennel stuff and all that, that's actually relatively easy.
Okay.
In terms of the answer, because it's one answer for everybody.
Okay.
Okay, so for me, or for actually growing up, if me, my brothers, or my sister stepped
Mm-hmm.
out of line,
Mm-hmm.
right, it was spank, 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 spank.
Mm-hmm.
It was one consequence for everybody. Right? And because I'm the oldest, I may have gotten more than the youngest, so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, right? But it was appropriate to the personality type and the child.
Right.
So in your case, that's what you're lacking. It's just a means of being able to correct the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I would picture this is, so like, let's say you come home, everybody's barking, right? Or it's a situation where everybody's barking, and then Bessie's barking, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I actually wouldn't address Bessie first.
Okay.
I'd address the others.
Okay.
Because that's what's overwhelming her.
Could you look at my book?
That's what's
Bessie's trying to walk away with my book.
No. She's
Go ahead.
overwhelmed by the energy.
I would agree. That's a good way to put it.
So
Mm-hmm.
if I came home, and I've had as many as 5 dogs at one time, or even my stepdad with our 9 dogs, we didn't come home to barking dogs. We would come home, they'd walk up, they'd sniff us, they'd wag their tails, and they'd let us walk through, but nobody would jump on us, nobody would bark at us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there were some that were created, same thing, they wouldn't bark at us, they were quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But had we the same kind of energy that your dogs had, we would have had an issue.
Right.
Because the energy is so high, and then somebody has to stop it. And that's where what we call, in that case, not really redirected aggression, but the dogs start to correct each other because they're out of line. But then you got so many that it can become a big, huge scuffle.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now your guys are crated, obviously, except for the littles.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine if they were all free, that's what I would expect to see.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So first, I would correct, Ben and the 2 or 3 that are in the kennel by themselves, right?
Uh-huh.
And then we repeat that, and then I see how does it affect Bessie.
Okay.
So then you might find, whoa, like we come home now, we've addressed the other dogs, and Bessie doesn't even bark.
Right.
Because there's nobody feeding the energy.
Right.
Okay? Now, if she still barks, then I go like, all right, well, how is it less severe? Is it less intense? Right?
Right.
Is it quieter? And it doesn't mean we can't correct it, because we absolutely can. But it's much easier to correct her when she's down here than when she's all the way up here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, so like when I come into cases a lot, people think it's one dog in particular, and I go, it's actually not that dog, it's the other dog.
Right.
I'm looking at the whole picture, because people tend to look at the problem child. I'm like, but why is the problem child the problem child?
Exactly.
So that's how I'd handle that situation. Anything kind of around that same thing where they get stimulated and then it's just like a pack bark, it's really just corrections to tell them, cut the barking.
How do you do that? What does that look like? The corrections to get them to stop the barking?
Yeah, so that's where we delve into aversives, right?
Okay.
So, like, you have a prong on Bessie, correct?
Yes. Ben, Bessie, and Abby, the dachshund, they have all been trained with prong collars.
Okay. So the prong collar is an aversive.
Okay.
It's a means to mimic a dog bite.
Okay.
Right? So if a dog did something, you would use your prong collar to essentially bite the dog to teach them, I don't want you to do that.
Okay.
Right? So in those cases, you could use a prong on those dogs.
Okay.
Right? It depends on the context and the dog. So like, I know you have a 5-pound Chihuahua.
Uh-huh.
Right? Now they do make prong collars for his size, but
Let me introduce you to him and explain something about Oliver first, though.
Sure.
So you mentioned anxiety. This is Oliver.
Yeah.
He is like the most anxiety-ridden little dog you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
I have tried like Xanax. We have tried Thunder Shirts, CBD, everything. This little boy, the only time he doesn't scream or cry is when I'm holding him. Right?
But that reinforces the anxiety.
What?
That reinforces the anxiety.
Damn it.
Because you're thinking, just stop it. Right? And I'm thinking, just stop it, but you're not going to be needing me.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
So I'm enabling him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So dogs don't tolerate instability.
Right.
So I brought a dog home back when I was operating from my home for a boarding train. It was a very anxious dog from Wisconsin.
Okay.
And it was dog friendly, just very anxious.
Right.
And I brought her in. I didn't have time, so I just kind of dropped the leash and I went to my computer to do some computer work real quick. Mm-hmm. And my pit bull, because she kept panting and pacing and circling, my pit bull walked over and I started watching, and I wish I would have recorded this. And she walked over to the dog as it was pacing, and just very slowly and just very confidently and assertively postured. And then when the dog came by, nipped the dog.
Really?
The dog yelped and then sat down. My pit walked away, and then like 5 minutes later, the dog fell asleep.
That's interesting.
Because all she said was, cut the crap.
Okay, gotcha.
So you have to think like a dog. Dogs don't give each other pills. They don't give each other CBD.
That's true.
They don't take each other to the vet. You know, they bite each other.
Right.
Okay. And I've been collecting videos over the internet of moms correcting puppies, mothers of litters.
Yep.
And there's one of like it's a golden or it's a Labrador with like 10 puppies, and they're all like yipping. And she charges in the room very aggressively, and they start yipping and whining, and within a couple of minutes, they all quiet down.
I've seen that one. I know what you're talking about.
Yes, that's dog.
Well, and I have seen that because I saw how Mama, what she would do to correct the puppies, right? Yeah. And I saw how she took care of them, and none of them would be out of line because she would just go over, she'd, put her mouth around their neck or, do different little things like that. And they'd cry and they'd whimper, but she wasn't hurting them. They were clearly fine.
Yeah, that's how they get tough.
Right.
So dogs like, the little Chihuahua, like I get it because people are thinking like they always stay away from aversives because they're thinking I'm going to make it worse. And you can make it worse if you approach it wrong. Right?
Okay. Right.
But like, let's say you corrected him and he looks more stressed and anxious, right? That's normal.
Okay.
But it takes giving him what another dog would give him in order to get tough.
To understand what they need. Yeah.
Like I have an 8-pound Chihuahua and I had him on a prong and I used to correct him so hard, he'd go spinning. But then he'd go right back to barking again. Right. And I had to keep correcting. And I remember people looking at me, they're like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, it's not like it hurts them. The dog keeps doing it, So there's different ways of correcting, but I'm just like kind of informing you that's what you're lacking.
I agree. No, and I know you're right because when I am correcting with the prong collar, I mean, I'll go out for runs with Ben and Bessie and I go to a stoplight and I say sit. And they know to sit because if they don't, I just do no. And I don't even have to tug real hard because they know when I'm telling them you need to sit. Like they know that in that moment. So I'm not one to think that that correction is incorrect, right? Or wrong.
Because we're just disagreeing with the behavior.
Yes, exactly.
Stop barking.
Right.
Like, I don't need them to be sit, stay down, come heel, all that stuff. I just need them to not bark.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, that's why it's so simple.
Right.
I have an interesting kind of question there. Is we had a similar situation with Abby when she was a puppy, and when she was at dog training now, you know, she's a barker.
Oh God, yeah.
And you know, we asked them like, hey, like, you know, would you be able to train this out of her, right? Or help us train this out of her? And they said, well, now she'll grow out of it, you know, or just give her a correction.
She didn't grow out of it.
She's a stubborn little dachshund who will literally tell her, you know, we're not sure how to correct a bark out of her because, you know, we'll tell her to sit. She sits her butt down and barks, you know, like she will literally be sitting there barking the whole time. And every time we'll be trying to give her a strong correction, she just.
You talk about strong correction with the prong, correct?
With the prong, yeah.
So I'm going to cover two pieces here.
Yeah.
One, and I know earlier you had an example where the sit seemingly worked for Bessie, right?
Yeah.
Think of obedience as education and think of behavior as morality, okay?
Okay.
English, math, science, don't sit, stay, come, don't jump, don't bark, don't bite, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, okay? So you can have a person who's a genius, but they're a terrible person.
That's true.
You can have a person who's a very good person, but they're not the smartest person. Right? It's the same thing with dogs. So when you said sit, you didn't do anything for the behavior. You did mechanical stuff. She's like, all right, I'll sit, but I'll just bark while I sit. Right? And I understand that you've done the correction, right? And you said your harshest correction.
Right.
And that's where prong collars, they have a cap, right? And I'd have to see your correction. Because what you may think is your harshest correction, it's their harshest correction for a small dog. Right? And earlier I said I would correct my Chihuahua so hard, he'd go spinning. So there's a lot of force there.
Right.
Right? So there's that also. But like, let's say I took Abby and she was barking and I corrected her with the prong and she shut up. Clearly your harshest correction isn't what you think it is, right? Because you're going by the size of the dog and I'm going by the behavior. I don't care about size of dog. I care about behavior. And I've dealt with very, little 5-pounders who need a hell of a correction because they're smaller. You would think the force would resonate the same way it would to like a 40-pound dog, but it doesn't because they're so small.
Right.
So they're harder to correct, right? So there's a couple of variables there. It could be that you are giving a very harsh correction, but she's a dog. She's meant to be bitten. And your harshest prong collar correction will never match a dog bite. Okay? So that's why there's other aversives. Okay? And, so now I'll talk about like what I'm known for and stuff. So I use primarily e-collar. I don't think you need e-collar for all your dogs. Definitely Bessie is what I would recommend for sure. It'll help tone her down. Okay?
Could you explain what an e-collar is and does?
Yes. So have you ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor? Have you ever had stim therapy or TENS unit?
No.
No? But you know I'm talking about the machine they put on your muscles that move your muscles?
Yes.
Yes, that's an e-collar.
Yes. Oh, okay, gotcha.
So people think like, because it's called a shock collar, which is an incorrect term, it's a miniaturized TENS unit. So they use the technology on humans.
Right.
And in my opinion, it's more refined because with a TENS unit, there's still risk of electrocution. There's still risk of burn if they set it up incorrectly, if they're not keeping an eye on it. With e-collars, we don't have that.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a muscle contraction.
Okay.
And when you go to a chiropractor or physical therapist, they'll start low, they'll work their way up. And you tell them, okay, that's too high. They'll lower it and they'll let the machine do its work.
Okay.
The same thing for e-collar.
Okay.
We start low, we work our way up. Okay. Whenever we're teaching anything, we always start low, we work our way up. When it comes to behavior, it's a little bit different. Okay. Because behavior is all about consequence.
Right.
So like, here in Chicago, like I know if I run a red light, I'm gonna get a $100 ticket.
Right.
Right. That's a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people think all about like, well, you have to teach the dog. I'm like, you can't. You can't teach a dog like a child. You can tell a child, if you take something that's not yours, there will be consequences, and these are the consequences, right? They know that, they process that, and then they make a decision. You can't do that with the dog, right? There is no education on it's impolite to bark at guests, okay? It's just don't bark at guests, right? And it's just the correction needed for to achieve the not barking at guests, okay? So I don't care if it's my first day with the dog. If that dog is with me for training and I disagree with stuff, I'm doing it day one, and I'm doing it at the level I deem appropriate. Okay. And usually we have feedback. So I already know when the dog comes in, like the dog might need a harsh correction. So I'm like, why am I going to waste time with little soft corrections? Like, I'm going to come in where I need to come in.
Right.
That's why we get really quick progress. So we got some troublemakers.
Oh, she's chewing on a sweatshirt.
So, you know, that's why that's easier. And I'd have to like see your prong corrections to see how you're doing them and stuff like that. And then, you know, there's other options. But the only one that I feel that would necessarily need the e-collar is Bessie,
okay.
Because of the anxiety stuff. Okay. When we teach remote collar, we don't come in provoking the problem 99% of the time. It's let's get structure and formal discipline in and see what it fixes. Okay. Her stress levels are up here, you know, due to context in the situation and stuff. We need to bring them down.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then see if you're correcting the other dogs and getting control here, and we're dialing down Bessie and also correcting her as well, we really should be resolving all the issues.
Right.
Ideally, right?
Right.
If you just solely focus on Bessie, you would forever have problems, because this is part of the problem. These 6 dogs are part of the problem as well.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the difference between like a dog trainer and like someone like myself, a behaviorist. Because I come in, I'm like, all right, this is a bigger picture. Yeah. And I'm not going to say like train 7 dogs. Right. Right? It's not about training. It's about teach these dogs what not to do.
Yes.
Bring Bessie's stress levels down. She does need a bit more discipline to just settle her nerves and go, what does this address? Okay. And then it's really a lot of it's play it by ear.
Right.
And then for instance, because she's the 2 instances with resource guarding over a treat and over a bone.
Yeah.
That's resource guarding. That's separate, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is since you have so many dogs, it's more so, and I'm sure you do this already, just more mindful of where things are, who has what.
Yes.
Right? So if I give one dog a bone, or I give every dog a bone, they're all separated, either on a bed or in their kennels, and nobody moves.
Okay.
Okay, nobody can no swapping bones, none of that nonsense. Here's your bone, you take it. If you don't want it, too bad.
Yes.
You can't move.
Okay.
Right? Which is easier because it's just don't move.
Right.
And then when they're done, or when you decide they're done, you remove everything, any leftovers, put them away, and then it's freedom.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a strict structure on that, because when you have so many dogs, it's the wisest thing is just prevention. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Like teaching dogs to share I'm not saying it's impossible, but for your average dog owner, very difficult. Okay, very nuanced. So I'm not even worried about that. I'm more so just here's a structure. We're more mindful of things to prevent that from happening. Questions?
No, and I was just thinking we do the separation. We know like Evie, Oliver, and Abby, they eat together, right? And so they do well with bones in the same room. Ren and Stimpy, they eat together, and Stimpy likes to swap bones. He likes to try and eat as many bones as humanly possible. So we would love to know how to keep it so that they are all in their places and they just stay. That would be great.
Correct. the one when Bessie was on edge and then Will entered with Abby.
Yes.
That's what I would call territorial or redirected aggression.
Okay.
Her stress levels, again, were too high.
Uh-huh.
And then Abby came in, and it's kind of like that give me space. You know, it had to go somewhere.
Right.
So that one, again, if we're controlling the energy more, we shouldn't see, you know, if Bessie's not up here in stress, we technically shouldn't see anything.
Right.
Okay. Now, if Bessie's in a room by herself and either you or Will enter with another dog, and she does something, and she's not stressed, she's calm, that's territorial. Okay. Doesn't mean it can't be addressed. It'd be partially prevention and then partially correcting the behavior, because I can't make Abby like another dog entering her space.
Right.
We can get her to tolerate it
Right.
and not do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like a blend of prevent it from happening. That's the easiest approach for everything. But if it should happen, we're also going to do things to address it so that she doesn't go to that degree. But we're not like purposely pushing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like when I deal with human aggressive dogs, we'll do touching and stuff. And in some cases, we turn the dog around and they're sociable. In other cases, I'll tell the owner, I'm only doing this because I know people on the street might just randomly come up and touch your dog, but I wouldn't say, hey, touch my dog.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we're doing prevention, but I'm going to do this just in case because I know how people are, but ideally we want to avoid that.
I'm very big on that. Like I know Oliver, he could be a fear biter. I have no doubt he could do that. And so when I take them for walks, we used to live in Evanston and I had to be very proactive. People would just walk up and start petting them. And it made me furious. I would just look at them, please don't pet my dog, right? I had no qualms about saying no petting my chihuahuas, right? Like that's just not what you're going to do. So, I get that.
The anxiety, pacing, panting, shaking stuff, you know, that with the discipline, we should bring that down.
Okay.
If she's already an anxious dog, we can't make her unanxious. We can only teach her how to handle that anxiety better.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The kennel anxiety, we can address as well. Mm-hmm. That one's probably the hardest. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just because it happens when you're gone.
Right.
So what we may end up having to do is I'd see how she progresses, and then do a bark collar if needed. Okay. Okay. So a bark collar will correct whining and barking, and a lot of times the presence of it alone just keeps the dog shut up, that they don't even get anxious. Okay. So they work hand in hand. When it comes to that stuff, there's no guarantee that we'll get past the bark collar. Worst case scenario is when you're gone, she's wearing the bark collar, but it keeps her settled. Right. Right. Like she doesn't, start pulling at the bars and moving the gate and stuff, because she knows that thing's present. So she's anticipating it'll correct her. Mm-hmm. Right? So then it keeps them settled because they know it's not even worth trying to be a jerk or whatever. Right. What we do want to make sure though, is we do have to resolve the barking or isolate her kennel, because if all the dogs bark, it's going to set off that collar. That's what I'm saying? Yeah. So she'd have to be removed. Right. Okay. And in a different room or something, because their barks will offset her collar. Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So, and that one's kind of remains to be seen type of deal. I have exercises for what you're dealing with. Awesome. We actually had, I posted up on my YouTube channel. And by the way, if you want to know about how I approach things, on my YouTube channel, if you can go through my website, we've been recording again all our sessions and stuff and just posting them uncut, unedited. Okay. And I posted one of a dog very similar to Bessie. Okay. And how we addressed it with the prong collar. Okay. Okay. And he's not perfect by any means, because it's just the prong collar. We need more tools for a guy like him. Mm. But at the end of the video, you see him finally calmly resting, and he would salivate, he would bite the bars, he'd lick the kennel, and you see him in the beginning, and then at the end, he's just completely passive, calm, and laying down. Okay. But it took a lot of corrections, Right. But that again is with the prong collar. E-collar makes life very easy.
Okay.
because it's either press of a button,
Okay.
or if you do the bar collar, it's automatic.
Right.
Okay. So the even trickier part is you guys are in Elk Grove, right? Okay. What are you trying to do, like one-on-one? Are you trying, how are you trying to approach this?
I mean, you guys are in the city, right? Yeah. I mean, Maria was saying you guys meet at Lakeview for one-on-ones. Is that what you do?
Right. So we've been meeting with clients at Oz Park, which is technically Lincoln Park.
Oh, okay.
For people that come out of the city, we meet them at Independence Park because it's right off an expressway.
Oh, okay.
Because if you try to make it all the way to Oz, it's longer than it needs to be.
Lincoln Park is pretty far.
It is.
Yeah. So Independence Park is off the expressway.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not Irving Park, right?
Or it's 34 minutes. I could easily make that drive to Independence Park. So that's not a problem. I drive to Bucktown quite a bit. So I'm used to driving into the city. Yeah.
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 So the reason why we've been meeting at Oz is because due to COVID, flipped everybody upside down, right? So I applaud you for the backyard yoga because you can still do some stuff, right? You gotta.
Yeah.
So most of my time is here at the facility.
Okay.
Because I'm free work, right?
Okay.
So trying to save money, trying to pay the rent and all that stuff, and having everybody come to us at Oz Park or Independence Park allows us to see more people in a shorter time frame.
Yeah.
So before, I used to see 8 clients a day, but it'd be 13 hours total.
Wow.
Because I'd be driving everywhere, right? Now I can see 8 clients in a maybe 9.5 hour period.
Right.
Right. So that helps out a lot. So if you're willing to drive, that opens things up a lot more. Okay.
Yes.
So what we would do is a blend of Zoom and videos that I would forward you, like, hey, here's some material.
Okay.
And then in-person stuff.
That'd be great.
Okay. The in-person stuff would really just be needed for Bessie.
Okay.
Okay. The 2 things that we really need to focus on is just is leash walking. Okay. I know. So earlier I talked about education and morality, right? Obedience, behavior I don't really care about the obedience aspect. I care about a discipline behind it.
Okay.
Okay. The fact that we're putting consequence on her, putting expectations, putting standards, putting things that we expect her to do, and if she doesn't do it, there's physical consequence for it. You may see an uptick in anxiety because there's a stressor involved, but that's actually again what toughens dogs up. Okay, and we see how does that affect her behavior in the home. Okay, so definitely 2 classes would need to be done in person. So what we've done is we've added 2 Zoom sessions to all our programs. Okay, so we have 6, 9, and 12-week programs. I think for you'd be fine with 6. So it'd be 6 technically up to 6 in person plus 2 Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So what that means is if you need 4 in person, but 4 over Zoom, you're fine.
Right.
Right. So it's up to 6 in person and then 2 videos. Okay. So we would do the 2 in person, and then we can do the Zooms to see how she's doing, but then also I'd educate you on just like the pack hierarchy, how we're going to correct 6 dogs, different methods of correcting. Then I'm going to give you supplemental videos to watch.
Okay.
So you can go, oh, okay, this is what Jesse was talking about, and that's how we're going to apply it.
Okay.
This is really a play it by ear kind of case.
Yes.
Okay. And everything I do is play it by ear. The most important thing is the first class is always leash walking for whoever needs it. And then everything else is pretty simple. Okay. It's really, again, just consequence or stopping behaviors and finding the consequence that's appropriate to the dog and their behavior. Right. So we'd most likely review your prong corrections. Yep. We'd have to find a way to create situations where we would need to correct the dogs. So if, like, let's say you put all the dogs away and you keep out one that's a big barker and we ring the doorbell, like stuff like that. And then I would observe and go like, okay, I see what you're doing. It's not as harsh as you think it is.
Right.
Right. And then I'd educate you on that. See if you can do it via the Zoom. If not, I send you, again, videos on how do you correct correctly, right? If needed, let's say you're like, Jesse, we just can't get it, right? And I'll give you different approaches to correcting. Then I go, let's do an in-person then. Because then I need to show you how to correct correctly.
Right.
Okay. So your case is very interesting. Okay. It's simple, but it's interesting in the sense that they don't need to learn sit, down, stay, none of that stuff. Okay. You just need to learn how to correct them appropriately. Because I know you get a span of different size dogs. So like the prong correction on Bessie might be different on Ben, you know, on the tiny one, you know, but he still needs corrections in order to stop the barking,
Right.
you know, things like that. So his 10 might be different than another dog's.
Right.
You know, so I that's what I would do in your case is I'd probably just do the 6 classes because the way I operate is I just focus on what you're wanting and needing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Bessie is a concern here, but when I look at the bigger picture, I'm just like, this is just hierarchy, you know,
Yes.
aside from a few behavioral things.
Yeah.
The kennel anxiety, again, we can work on over
Right.
the Zoom. That's pretty simple.
Right.
And then we just progress from there. Does that make sense?
It does. And honestly, it makes me feel relieved that you can help us teach me in particular how to how to work on these behavioral issues, right? How for me to communicate with them what I don't want them to do. I think that is very much what I lack. And I would love to learn how to fix that. So.
And just so you know, this is a lifestyle.
Yes. 100%.
Okay, this isn't like do training and then go back to what you were doing before.
Right.
Right. But what happens is if you're both on the same page and you get the structure down, your work becomes less over time.
Exactly.
Right. Because the rules are in place. So like
Right.
for me, you know, with our dogs, because there was already structure in place, if we had to bring in a foster dog or a rescue dog, it was never a problem.
Right.
Because we had structure already. The new dogs need to learn the structure, you know?
Yes.
So it's, you know, it may be difficult from an emotional standpoint, just so you know. Okay? Because you're going to have to change some things. And, you know, it's typically the hardest part for people is just when they're like, crap, I have to correct the dog that harshly. And I'm like, yep.
That will be harder for me.
Yeah.
I think will be like, all right, that's fine. I will probably be a little more, I'll be more emotional about it. And you'll have a harder time getting me to, I think.
Yeah.
I do.
In terms of cost, the 6-week plus 2 Zoom session or 6 class plus 2 Zoom is $825.
Okay.
Your Zoom, of course, gets credited towards the program.
Right.
And then the training collar I would recommend for Bessie, because she's 40 pounds,
Yes.
would run about, I think it's about $287 with tax.
Okay.
It's one of the best collars there is. Will last you a very long time. Waterproof, 3/4 mile range, and you get to up to off-leash reliability.
Okay.
You know, again, I'm only focusing on what you're needing, but in the future, if you ever decided, oh, we'd like to do more, like you can always push for more. I'm worried about obviously your issue and like the tension that's going on in the home.
Right. Oh, us too. Because we just reached a point where we don't know how to fix this on our own. We know we're lacking in something. And honestly, I'd rather spend the money for you to teach us how to be better dog owners than on stitches for Abby. So.
For sure.
Right.
Do you guys go for walks or anything?
I take Ben and Bessie for regular runs, and then I do separate walks for everybody. I'm not brave as you to walk 8 dogs at once. So.
Well, 2 of them would be easy because they're old, right?
Yes, I take the 3 tinies, Ren and Stimpy, and then Ben and Bessie. So we do like 3 groups.
You could probably do 5. Like
I've done 5.
Looking at, I saw what you had. I'm like, you could probably do the 5.
Yes,
right?
And I do. I'll walk Ren, Stimpy, Evie, Oliver together, and it's slow and it's funny because they're all very goofy. Ren likes to roll in the grass and rub, and so that's pretty much what we do. So. Sure.
So it's not absolutely needed, but if we end up having time to cover that, I would like to cover that.
That'd be great. I love that.
it helps create more of a unified pack.
Well, and honestly, if you could help with that, that'd be great, because whenever I do take them for walks, it's really stressful to get them ready to go on their leashes, because Abby and Oliver, the Dachshund and the Chihuahua, they just bark like lunatics the entire time I'm trying to leash everybody up.
Yeah.
And it drives me bonkers. Like, I can't hear myself think, and I don't know how to correct that.
Do any of them have reactivity?
To
Like
what?
barking at dogs or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Abby does, and Ren does.
The little ones?
Yes.
Okay, so that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
What about Bessie or Ben, the bigger ones?
If I don't have them come into a heel or walk next to me when there's another dog, yes, there will be.
Okay.
But if I am proactive and get them close to me, then they know we're walking right by the dog. We're not going to make a big deal out of it.
Okay. Just so you know, this is not necessary.
Okay.
Because Ben and Bessie are the biggest, correct?
Yes. They're
The
the
rest,
only
like-
two big dogs.
Okay. Is you can get a 2-dog system for just a little bit more in terms of the collar
Oh, okay.
for Ben and Bessie to train them to. So getting high-level training is easy with the e-collar.
Okay.
Right? And it makes correcting them easier because all you got to do is press a button. You're not worried about physical strength.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't, how do you say, if you wanted to do those two, to extend in half an hour, it's just $35 extra.
Okay.
Okay, for each session. And typically the only times when I work with multi-dog homes, they'll do the first 2 sessions and then it's fine afterwards.
Interesting.
Okay, so because we extend half an hour, so we can work 45 minutes with one dog, 45 minutes with the other dog, class 2, and then you're fine. Okay, because the concepts are very easy. Okay. I think that'd make your life easier in terms of if we get to the point where it's like, okay, great, we made a lot of progress. Now let's see if you can walk a unified pack. It would make your life easier with the bigger dogs. The little guys, you have a bit more gray area in terms of what you can work with because they're little.
Right.
Okay. So that's just an option for you. It's personal preference. Otherwise, if you buy it up front with the collar, I think it's a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
Now they make it so you can expand it. So all you have to do is buy a second collar in the future, but then you're paying more for the separate collar. Okay, it's not that much more, but it's a little more. Okay. So just some things to think about. Any questions before we go?
Which collar would you recommend?
That
you guys provide?
It's the brand is Dogtra, Dogtra, and the 1-dog system is 2300 NCP.
Okay.
And the 2-dog system is 2302.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome.
Oh, so it's just like a single receiver, like one receiver for both of them, essentially, or
it's one remote for 2 receivers.
2 receivers, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And then if you wanted, because I have a family right now that has a multi-dog home, and they're like, I wish there was another remote. I'm like, you can purchase a separate one and pair it in case you take the dog separately. But in the beginning, when you're starting off, you're fine with one remote to 2 dogs. And I don't stop in terms of teaching you. Like if you make tons of progress, we just keep going.
Okay.
So if we get everything resolved and you're like, hey, I'd like to be able to have my dogs off leash with Ben and Bessie. All right, well, this is what we can do.
Okay.
Okay. So
yeah.
So there's gonna be a lot of play it by ear. Anything else?
How do we move forward? How do we set up the in-person stuff and do all that kind of stuff?
I'll talk to Maria and I'll fill her in. She's going to reiterate everything I told you.
Okay, great.
Okay. You can always do longer programs, but from what you're needing, I think you'll be fine with the 6+2.
Okay.
2 Zoom sessions, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, she'll handle scheduling and all that stuff. I've learned not to talk about my calendar because it's always
That's smart. No, that's very smart.
Okay.
Anything else? I think that's great. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to working with you, and you made me feel a little bit better. So thank you.
Yeah, it's it's what we're here for. And then I encourage everybody, go to my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We're super transparent, and you'll get to see e-collar.
Okay.
If you want to learn more about it, watch lesson 1.
Okay.
The lesson 1 videos are the first ones, right? So that's
Okay.
when there's going to be like the most, if there's going to be any, how do you say, resistance and stuff, it's going to be on class 1.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll be in touch. If you need anything else, you just let us know.
We will. Thank you so much, Jesse.
You're welcome.
It's
Have
nice
a
to
good
meet you.
holiday.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.